Welcome to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and I know it's been a while, so we've got, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not doing, a show a week to preview one fight and then review one fight kind of thing, so I've waited for a couple of them to build up, as well as get a schedule going. So I'm going to go backtrack. Probably not going to make a lot of you happy with some of this, but I'm going to backtrack all the way back to Nonito Donaire's challenge of WBO and WBC bantamweight champion Fernando Montiel a few weeks ago, and it was a spectacular career-defining win for Donaire to couple with his career-defining win over Vic Darchinyan a few years ago, in which he scored a solid second-round stoppage over Montiel. Here's where I differ in the way I viewed this fight and the way I've reviewed it several times since, and that is that everybody's in awe of the spectacular one-punch power of Donaire, where he basically put Montiel on the deck with a left hook, and then a follow-up of two punches, and the referee waved the fight off. I think it. I don't want the Donaire people to think that I'm, being critical of him, because I'm not. There's nothing that he has done wrong whatsoever. He is probably one of the top 5, if not top 3, pound-for-pound fighters in the world right now. But what I took away from this fight is, and nobody's written and nobody's spoken about this, is that Fernando Montiel committed a cardinal sin a second before he got knocked out. Everybody was, in awe of, basically Donaire baiting Montiel to throw a right hand and then counter off of it and all this other kind of, which was great. I'm not taking it. But the fact is, Montiel threw a right hook from an orthodox stance, it really wasn't even a right hook, it was a roundhouse right that he glanced off of Donaire, and he left himself wide open. What I'm saying by the cardinal sin that he committed, that boxers at the elite level are taught never ever to do, is to throw punches from outside their shoulder span. Those are the punches that anybody can see coming and defend against. He started a right hand way outside, and basically, Donaire knew it was coming. Donaire kind of stayed close enough to let it glance off of him, and then basically when Montiel followed through with that punch, he was wide open, and the left hook swept right across the side of his face and knocked him on his back. And it was the results of it were very reminiscent to some of the old knockouts where Montiel thought he was still on his feet, his arms and legs were wiggling around and this and that, and much to his credit he got up, and I couldn't believe he got up. But the fatal flaw that caused that knockout to happen, I think I picked Donaire to win the fight. He was going to win the fight anyway. He was the better athlete, he's the younger, more dynamic fighter. He was going to win the fight anyway, and kudos to him. I haven't seen a flaw like that, or a knockout like that happen due to somebody leaving themselves wide open at the elite championship level, unless you go back in time, all the way back to October of 1990. And what am I talking about? James Buster Douglas throwing a crazy right uppercut from a distance at Evander Holyfield, leaving himself wide open for a straight right hand that put him down. And personally, I think he could have gotten up, but he just took a dive, basically, in my estimation. He just collected his millions and stayed down. But it was the same exact thing. Neither one of those two guys had any business throwing those punches, and it got them both knocked out. It was a fantastic win for Donaire, and the fallout from this is, I'm sure Montiel will be back. Fighting for some minor titles if he wants to, and this and that. Because it's not like these guys got paid a tremendous amount of money, so it's not like Montiel's going to retire off of this payday. He's not. Donaire, though, they are looking at a very solid fight that Top Rank is trying to pull off in May in the San Francisco area where Donaire grew up. A further unification fight between Donaire and Anselmo Moreno of Panama, who is a tall southpaw that owns the WBA title. He is the guy who took the title away from Vladimir Sidorenko on a close and somewhat disputed decision, and also in a rematch beat him by a close disputed decision. And Sidorenko, as you guys know, was bounced off the canvas like a yo-yo by Donaire in his last fight. So the situation is this. This will be a further test for Donaire because he's going to be fighting somebody who's got physical gifts much like him. But again, much like when Pacquiao fought Hatton, you can have a great fighter against an elite fighter and it still ain't going to make a difference because Donaire's going to overcome this, the southpaw thing like with Victor Archinian and the height thing, because I don't think Moreno's got the power to hurt Donaire, and we all know that Donaire's got the power to hurt Moreno. So I hope that fight comes off, and one of the things that makes me somewhat excited about that fight is not since somebody wrote me an email a long time ago. I was just looking at it in my old emails that they were writing a paper for their college or something about the state of boxing and how all these titles got basically splintered and this and that, and what the lineage was. This is a long time ago, a couple of years ago, and I wrote a long response. It took me a couple hours to write. It was 2 or 3 pages worth, where I went through pretty much the original 8 weight classes and what had happened. The bantamweight division, the 118-pound division, has not been unified. Even the WBA and the WBC, which were the 2 original splinters, have not been unified since they were split apart. Now, back in 1977, I believe it was, Carlos Zarate, who was the WBC champion, took on Alfonso Zamora, who was the WBA champion. Both were undefeated. Only one fight between the 2 of them. They were both undefeated, and only one fight. I think maybe Zarate had lost a fight. I'm not sure. But of their wins, only one had gone the distance. All the rest of their fights were knockouts. They fought each other in an over-the-weight fight where neither title was at stake, but it was a fight between the WBA and WBC champion in which Zarate won by a 4th round knockout. That is the closest we've come to unification between the original 2 splinters in this division. So I'm one who is pushing for this fight to happen, even if it is a temporary piece of glue that holds it together, because I know there are bigger and better things ahead for Donaire at 122 pounds and possibly even 126 pounds. This is one of the advantages. I know somebody had written about Donaire has one more fight with Top Rank. The money is there. The fights are there. The fights are there to be made with Top Rank, because they've got a lot of fighters locked up, like Yuriorkis Gamboa, like Juan Manuel Lopez. All these fighters are there to be and fights are there to be made with their own fighters or whatnot, and lots of money to be made from them. So a great career-defining win for Donaire, a critical cardinal sin error in judgment by Montiel. Nobody else is picking this up. Nobody else, at least that I've read, I haven't read all that much on it, is even picking this up with Montiel, throwing almost an amateurish right hand at Donaire and got knocked out for it. All right, moving on to the lightweight division now. A fight I did not review, and I'm sorry, and I'm actually glad I didn't. I'll tell you why. Brandon Rios scored a 10th round TKO over Miguel Acosta, I believe it was. And one of the things I want to point out is if I would have done a preview of this fight and done a video on it, I would have picked Acosta to win the fight. I just thought there were too many holes in Rios' defense, and this almost came to fruition in the 4th round of this fight, because Acosta was sweeping the early rounds and looked like he was on his way to a knockout victory in the 4th round. For some reason, he either punched himself out, hurt himself, or something laid off of Rios, giving him the chance to get back into the fight, start ramping up his momentum, and the fight started taking a turn in the 5th and 6th rounds, in which it started going into Rios' favor. Now, Acosta did have a good 9th round in the fight, bouncing back from a knockdown, but the 10th round, he had hardly anything left. I think he was trying to sit on his lead. He was fighting in different spurts, but Acosta could not keep Rios off of him. And one thing I will say about Brandon Rios, for all of his defensive flaws and his defensive liabilities, which are going to be his downfall eventually, I have never seen a young fighter, young meaning 20 fights or less, or in that same range, turn punches over like he does. He turns them over like Alexis Arguello used to turn them over. In watching slow motion replays, as well as looking at still pictures online, the way he turned over a right hand, he totally pronated. And that is where he was getting the maximum leverage and power on his hands. He's a big lightweight, but couple that with the fact that he can absorb punches and he turns his punches over the correct way. And I was saying about this check hook thing. That's another thing. I'm gonna get back to the nonsense with hold the thought about Brandon Rios, about Roy Jones or whoever saying that was a check hook that Donaire landed on. Listen, the check hook, if there is such a thing, I know, it's just almost like a cuff is what it is. The hand doesn't turn over. It's just it just keeps a person in check. It doesn't turn over. That's what calls a check hook. That punch that put Montiel down, it turned over. And the thing with Brandon Rios is he turned all his punches over really, really well and gets maximum leverage and maximum power on them. And especially his right hand. It's very rare you see a young fighter, they just, throw. That's usually as far as they'll pronate. I saw replays on Showtime as well as still pictures online of him following through all the way where you could almost see the bottom of his glove, basically facing his opponent after he had hit him and followed through with it. And unbelievable. And I think this was a terrific comeback for him. I have reservations about getting on his bandwagon. I give him full credit in the world for taking this fight against a very tough guy in Acosta, as well as taking out what's his name 2 fights ago, Anthony Peterson, who I thought is definitely more dangerous than Lamont Peterson. So, if anything, he's laid his foundation much the same way Timothy Bradley has laid his foundation. He's done it the hard way, and I look for bigger fights for him. The only problem is, if he fights Humberto Soto in a WBA WBC match, I'm fine with that. I think it's a toss-up fight in which I think that I've been thinking Soto's been long in the tooth for a while. He just barely got by Urbano Antillion, who I picked to beat him, and I think Brandon Rios has a real good chance of beating him. And I think he probably, the longer it takes for that fight to be made, the better Rios' chances are. But the other side of the coin is, Soto's a better puncher than Acosta, and Acosta had Rios in big trouble in the 4th round. They've got to sharpen up his defense. A fight against Juan Manuel Marquez, I would definitely say that Marquez would win the fight. I don't think you can substitute any sharp punching and lack of defense. Power and determination cannot overcome very sharp counter punching with power, with precision, and the experience factor, coupled with the lack of defense on Rios' part, or I should say the holes in his defense. Right now I'd take Marquez in that fight. The fight I would like to see to get them to that range is a very similar fighter to Rios, and that would be Michael Katsidis. I don't think Katsidis is as refined, if I can even use that word in comparing these two, but I think as far as his size and his durability and his power, those two hooking up would be something vicious to see, and I would like to see it. I think that if Rios could get through Katsidis, then I would definitely say, okay, he's ready to take on Marquez, but not before. And I think that basically putting him against Soto would be about the limit of right now until he starts to build his championship, I guess, quality ledger, if you want to say that. But I think it was a very good win. I would have been wrong. I would have picked Acosta to win the fight. I thought that he was too refined and too well groomed a boxer puncher to deal with somebody who's somewhat crude as Rios. But through the first 4 rounds, my thoughts were being reinforced in watching the action. It's just that you have to give kudos to Robert Garcia for keeping Rios in the fight and keeping his head straight, and getting him moving and turning the fight the way he needed to be turned. Okay, last weekend, and I got some more gripes which I'm sure people are going to be mad at me about. Saul Canelo Alvarez winning the vacant WBC 154-pound title with a near shutout decision over Matthew Hatton. Okay, where do I start griping about this? One, the fight shouldn't have been made between these two. I mean, you have Hatton, who's at best an average-sized welterweight, maybe even a big junior welterweight, going against a really big welterweight and a decent-sized junior middleweight in Alvarez. Hatton couldn't hurt him. I mean, it's just that simple. The other thing is this catchweight nonsense again. Don't make this fight if it's got to be a catchweight. This is for the 154-pound title. I mean, get 2 guys who make the 154-pound weight and have the fight. I mean, don't draft a welterweight to fight a junior middleweight and say that this is going to be, this is going to be a catchweight for the junior middleweight title. I mean, this is bogus, or super welterweight, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm just, and this is the way boxing's going. Dan Raphael was writing an article saying, look, he hasn't proven himself against any top flight competition except for Carlos Baldomir, and he's in a title shot of a title, almost like a bastard title that was given up by Sergio Martinez. It wasn't even really won legitimately by Sergio Martinez because Vernon Forrest would not fight him. Excuse me. And with that said, I mean, it's almost like it's like a bastard title again. Now, with that said, there's another division in boxing which is the same way. I mean, it was a good win for Alvarez. I have my questions of what's going to happen if he goes in against the likes of Kirkland or the likes of El Perro there, or even a Kermit Cintron, somebody who can box and is strong. I mean, he hasn't even faced those roadblocks yet, and they're calling him a world champion. I mean, it's like insane. The other thing is, where have we seen this before? How about one division south with Andre Berto? He didn't beat a real champion to get that title. He's fought a bunch, some retread fighters. This is the way boxing is going. These promoters are angling themselves and angling their way into getting their fighters titles without really being ready for the big time. And I'm sorry I mean, I like Alvarez, okay. I'm not getting on his bandwagon either because I think that he's been rushed. I mean, you look at comparing these two, Brandon Rios and Saul Alvarez. Saul Alvarez has beat down Carlos Baldomir, the best thing on his resume, okay? Knocked him out, the only guy to do that, okay? Granted, Baldomir really, in his prime, was not a major threat to an elite fighter. Let's just be clear about that. And those of you who are going to bring up Zab Judah looked past him to a Mayweather fight. He didn't take him seriously, and he would have beaten him if he did take him seriously. That's just the way it is. Now, I'm not throwing Baldomir under the bus. He was a very good fighter, but it's not the best of measuring sticks to use. Brandon Rios went through Anthony Peterson, who's a dangerous up-and-coming fighter. Okay, he was more ready to go through a champion, although again, this is that vacant splinter title thing, Acosta, by taking his title. Neither Andre Berto or Saul Alvarez has beaten a legitimate champion or even a guy who's won a splinter title and calls himself champion. He got to enter the ring second, get the red corner, get his name introduced twice. They have not had to take that title away from somebody who's not going to give it away. That's my point to all this. And Golden Boy thinks they're doing this guy a favor, and they'll probably try to angle a way to get him a fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and it'll sell like monster if they can somehow work with Top Rank to get that pulled off. But I think it was a very good, solid win again for Alvarez. Hatton had no business being in that fight. Not that he doesn't deserve a shot at the title, I'm not saying, because he really hasn't beaten anybody to deserve a shot at the title. He really needs to be concentrating at 147 or even less, pounds. And that brought us to the other fight that I've gotten a million emails about from main events. The Judah-Mabuza Zab Judah fight at the Prudential Center, which, of everything, this was pleasantly surprising and pleasing at how disciplined Zab Judah was to score a 7th round stoppage over Judah-Mabuza. He attributes it to being a born-again Christian. I attribute it to him basically maybe starting to shed this thug mentality that he's had, this Mike Tyson Brooklyn thug mentality thing that him and Fernando Vargas, although he's from the West Coast, the three of them were all kind of like in together with this thug mentality kind of thing. And my thinking on this is that Pernell Whitaker has maybe slapped him around and basically told him the same thing that Angelo Dundee had to tell Sugar Ray Leonard in his fight. You're blowing it, son. You're blowing it. You've had this amazing gifts that God gave you, and you've been blowing it. So it looked like to me that Zab Judah was very focused in his training, very disciplined in his training, and very disciplined in the fight. He followed directions. He got hit a couple of times, but hey, the way I look at this is, if you're going to be in the danger zone to actually score a knockout, you're going to be in the danger zone to be hit also. So him getting clipped with a punch that threw him off balance and made him, put a glove on the deck in the 4th round, I'll give it a pass. It's not the same as being cracked on the chin and basically finding yourself on your seat of your pants or your back. Okay. He did get rocked in the 6th round with the right hand, but again, I attribute that more to Judah-Mabuza being a very dangerous puncher, dangerous fighter, and Judah being in the danger zone. You're going to get hit. But the finish of this fight was what I would call fantastic. It almost turned back the clocks in my mind to when Zab Judah was fighting Jan Bergman and Tyrone, what's his name, Millette? Another guy from St. Louis. I think the guy who beat, the guy who rightfully had that title that Judah beat in defense, Millette. I don't know if his name was Tyrone Millette, Terran Millette. Anyway, my mind's, it started with a T, his name, but I think his last name was Millette, in which, he basically got these guys in trouble and then finished them, and Mabuza ate a short left hand, and next thing you know, he's basically draped through the ropes and over the ropes, and the fight's basically over from there because Judah put the finishing touches on him, and it was a fantastic display of both speed and power and knowing and smelling blood. Where does Judah fit in? One, I think that he is. I don't know that his chin is as durable at 140 as it is at 147. I mean, because he took some hellacious shots from Floyd Mayweather and Miguel Cotto before Cotto finally made him succumb. By a lot of fighters, even Joshua Clottey. He'd been on the canvas more times, I think, in the 140-pound division, and I don't know whether that weight drain is what makes him undurable. I think I like his chances against the likes of Devin Alexander. I'm not sure how he'd stack up against Timothy Bradley. I think it would be a very good pick'em fight. I think the experience that Zab Judah brings and the speed and skill is enough to basically make a fight against Timothy Bradley, much the way Kendall Holt did against Amir Khan. It'd be interesting to see, because I think that, I don't know if Amir Khan has faced anybody with the speed and I would guess he's, Maidana probably has more one-punch power than Judah, or about the same. I think the avenues in which that power is delivered, like straight through, is something that would present problems for Amir Khan. So Judah's right back in the mix, and I'm happy to see it for him. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of his, but I'm a fan of seeing people remake themselves and rebuild themselves and basically learn from their mistakes. And that was it for the fights that basically took place. Now, on to the schedule. March 11th, on some crazy pay-per-view card, Michael Grant's fighting against Ty Fields. Fight between two possibly has been, never will be's. Although Michael Grant and Ty Fields, and Joel Casamayo is also fighting on that card against Manuel Leiva in the welterweight division. This Saturday, March 12th, regular HBO, Sergio Martinez making his first defense of his WBC, I guess it's just the ring middleweight belt now, against Sergey Zinzurek of, I believe, the Ukraine by way of Germany. This fight's going to be tough. I'm going with Martinez. I think he's just more dynamic. He is probably going to have some rough patches in this fight. Zinzurek is a southpaw with a very stiff jab, very good upright boxer out of the former Soviet system. And I think I would expect him to present troubles for Martinez. Don't look for a knockout in this fight. The chances of it going the distance are astronomical. And I'm going to go with Martinez. He has too many wrinkles in his offense and the angles he gives, and being able to bend at the waist and fight, throwing punches from his hips up, and things like that, that are probably going to confuse Zinzurek, and everything that Zinzurek does is based on that hard right jab that he has, that he sets everything else up with. And when if he's not able to land that punch, it's going to be a long night for him. But I expect this to be a clear unanimous decision for Martinez. Andy Lee is also on that card, continuing his comeback against Craig McEwen. I'm not sure if that's going to be televised. Also from Las Vegas, that fight's coming from Mashantucket, Connecticut. From Las Vegas, Showtime's having a pay-per-view in conjunction with Top Rank, in which Miguel Cotto is fighting Ricardo Mayorga in a 12-round fight for Cotto's WBA junior middleweight title. Now, this is what I'm saying. Cotto won that title from Yuri Foreman. Yuri Foreman won it from Daniel Santos. Daniel Santos won it from that guy from Haiti / Canada, who won it from somebody else. There's some type of track here. That WBC title in that division, there is no tracing it. It's just one bogus fight after another. Going back to when Vernon Forrest got it. Even Vernon Forrest won it vacant from Carlos Baldomir because Floyd Mayweather tossed it aside after beating Oscar De La Hoya. And De La Hoya got it from, Mayorga, which was illegitimate too, because it was really that other guy from Spain's title, Castillejo, that they stripped because he fought Vargas, and it's just the title is a mess going all the way back to to when when De La Hoya unified with Vargas. It really hasn't been legitimate since since basically Mosley lost to Winky Wright, and Winky Wright started getting stripped of them left and right for fighting better fights than the mandatories. I mean, it's been illegitimate ever since. Also, one in Glasgow, unless this has been called off, 2 fights to watch for. Ricky Burns is defending his WBA junior lightweight title against Joseph Laria, and more importantly, James DeGale, I believe the Olympic gold medalist, is fighting on that card against an opponent to be named. He's one to watch, actually. Keep a close eye on that guy. And that's going to do it for this show. There was a couple of things in the news. I'm trying to think of what it was. Oh, Vladimir Klitschko versus David Haye, 99% back on again, because Vladimir Klitschko's fight against Derek Chisora has been called off due to this previous injury, which is not healed correctly, to have Vladimir Klitschko ready to fight on April 30th. So, with that said, the sides are together. The only things that have not been done, according to all sides, is the contracts being signed. 50-50 split of all revenues. Everything else, the venue hasn't been set yet, but they're thinking it's going to be in Germany anyway. July 2nd, Vladimir Klitschko, David Haye. Hopefully after this, well, not hopefully, but after this is over, we're going to hit no more squabbling about who ducked who, this and that, blah, blah, blah. David Haye will probably be eating out of a straw after this is over, and we'll look forward to bigger, better things with, Thomas Adamek and Vitaly Klitschko and others. That's provided that Vitaly Klitschko gets past his defense, which is a week from now, which I'll hopefully be back to preview against Donaire Montiel, and he's no lock to win that fight. That's going to do it, folks. Thanks.